Welcome back to the Scale Forward podcast. I'm your host, Russell. Today, I'm joined by Petko, the CEO and founder of CHEFIN. CHEFIN is the world's largest network of independent chefs connecting clients with personalized high-end dining experiences, both at home and at corporate events. CHEFIN has served over 100,000 guests from humble beginnings in Australia now to globally expanding into the US, Brazil, and Hong Kong. Petko, thanks for jumping on today.
My pleasure. Look forward to having a nice chat.
Me too. Did I see you guys at the F1 the other weekend in Australia?
Yeah, we did a really interesting activation next to the F1 Grand Prix, just overlooking the race course, which was quite cool. We activated a whole building there from a new, really funky development where we had the cars coming up on a car lift to the actual floor. So we were hosting like a dinner, and you have like these sports cars sitting next to the living room behind a glass door, a glass window, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, sort of a door, window, I guess, a wall. And then on the other side, we could see the actual race happening. So that was a really cool activation.
That's fantastic. So good racing, good food, good vibes, good people.
And good drinks. We had
And
plenty.
yeah, that's true. Well, hey, Petko, for the people who aren't familiar with CHEFIN and yourself, would you mind explaining a little bit more about what CHEFIN is and who you are, and then how you got started along this? It's an incredible journey.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. So we're a private chef marketplace. So we've utilized the Uber style model where um, a customer can go on the platform, on the web app, and can say, hey, I want to book a romantic dinner for two, or I want to book my anniversary or a Christmas dinner. You select the date, you choose your dining style, number of guests in the city, and you make the booking. Then the platform actually takes on the availability of the chefs, the requirements that you've put in, the date, etc. Assigns you a chef that's available to actually deliver that booking for you. Then the rest is just magic, really. You can either accept it or decline it, of course. Similar to your Uber drivers, 98% of the time, we've sort of perfected the algorithm that 98% of the time customers actually accepted. Did not used to be that in the beginning, obviously. When we started, was a little bit more hit and miss, and we had a lot of situations where we had to replace chefs or change things. And we also tested a couple of different models as well. When we started, we did a bit of testing on the Airbnb model, on chefs actually individually listing pricing and listing menus and things. So it was quite interesting to actually be able to compare how these models impact the purchase behavior and the usage of the platform, and how it actually works from an operational perspective as well, because it's got an impact for both, for us operating and running the platform, but also for the customers looking at and perceiving the platform as either more premium or more lower end service. In particular, like that Airtasker model was it's sort of like on the bottom of the what is it called, on the bottom of the tree, right? Like you've got Fiverr and Airtasker, where you post a task and everyone just got to bid and undercut each other for the lowest price. And we really wanted to position ourselves as a premium experience and a premium dining option rather than the cheapest new kid in the town, basically.
I mean, interesting story. I have no idea how you would have came up. I'm sure that's not how the idea started. Surely, it's like I'm going to infuse tech, food, and everything. Obviously, you grew into that. What's your personal background? What's your sort of work history?
It's quite interesting, actually. I studied science and I worked in chemistry and non-organic chemistry in particular. I worked on nanotechnology in 2000, sort of 5, 6 back in the days. And then I sort of transitioned into the business environment, into research and data. I spent around 15 years into that space, working on a lot of FMCG and consumer goods products, a bit of medical stuff, and some big brands now, not so big back in the days. I used to work for Uber, for example, and we worked on the Uber launch strategy across Asia Pacific, and the acquisition of YouTube, which I didn't even know what YouTube is back in the days, to be honest, around sort of 2007 or something. It was a very interesting sort of thing to research and look at. And this video platform looked really ugly, and you were supposed to sort of random videos that some other people posted somewhere else around the world. So it was a quite interesting project. Yeah. And Uber was obviously a very interesting project to work on. Like I think when we first started doing the project, we had around 7% awareness on the market. And we actually worked on researching and growing that awareness and working out the GTM strategy across Asia Pacific to, at the moment, being the dominant player across the world. But that was like sort of around 2015 or so. I grew up in my corporate career to a point where I really wanted to do something different. I wanted to get out of corporate, and not because I hated it, I actually loved it, but I didn't really see much future for myself. I was really sort of the second in charge after the CEO, and I wanted to do something more challenging, something that would give me more challenge in the future and an opportunity to actually grow into something bigger. And we started coming up and brainstorming a few different ideas on what do we want to do with CHEFIN, and or what do we want to do at that point of time. The CHEFIN idea wasn't really born yet. And then we hosted a few house parties with an Italian friend of mine. We started hosting people around, and we sort of realized that it is amazing entertaining people, but you don't have any time actually talking and enjoying yourself when you're hosting and cooking for 10, 20, or 100 people at home. You spend all your time 2 days or 3 days sometimes shopping, cooking, cleaning, and just dealing with all the admin work instead of actually doing the or enjoying yourself and enjoying the networking and enjoying your friends that are coming around to visit you. So then we came up with, we had actually a friend going to Hong Kong and experiencing this private chef experiences there, which is something that's been happening in Hong Kong for a while, since 2011 or so. And we sort of, the light bulb moment sort of come up in our head, and we were like, wow, why don't we just connect the people that want to cook for someone else with the people that want someone else to cook for them so they can enjoy themselves. We started testing a few different ideas on what's going to work and whether we can do a peer-to-peer or we needed to do a professional to sort of peer style marketplace. And we really wanted to go into that insured space and the space that can be a premium service. And that's why we went in having actual certified experienced chefs instead of doing a peer-to-peer marketplace. It was like almost impossible to get an insurance for it, and then the pricing model would have been really tricky to work out, and it's very hard to grow from a low end brand to a premium brand. But at the moment we chose to do the premium experience first, we could literally switch any day and have cheaper pricing and cheaper products if we want to do that and if we want to capture that market. So far we haven't wanted to be honest, or we haven't needed to. The premium market is sufficiently big enough for us to grow and scale across the world. Yeah.
What a story. It's like corporate, really successful in corporate, right? YouTube, Uber, some massive names, but there was a sleeping giant there, clearly, of the desire to be an entrepreneur and spinning many plates, pardon the pun. But so, like, the aha moment came from classic Italians entertaining, like, way too many people in their house, and then from Hong Kong, right? So that was like the aha moment. And then of course it wasn't just you that founded it, some co-founders jumped in, right?
Yeah, so we had a team of co-founders back in 2015, and we sort of came up with the idea together, and we tested and did things together basically, and we failed together, obviously. But I think one of the really important things from a long-term perspective in running a startup is to have a good team of co-founders. And maybe not all of you are gonna stick together. Like we split with the initial co-founders, and two of us stuck, and the two other guys went on their own and did lots of different things. But having this tight team actually helps you throughout the years. When you feel down, you have someone to pull you up and say, hey, we're actually doing not that bad. We could do better, but we're not that bad. Let's not give up. And you would always have moments where you want to give up throughout the years. It's just impossible to keep pushing on 100% all the time. Sometimes you just fall down and you're like, fuck this shit. I don't want to do this anymore.
That's so important to have that team. It's the same if anyone's ever played sports, and you may be the captain or the MVP, but you ain't shit without your team, basically. So it's the same thing. And you were lucky. You sort of, I guess you would say, like, the team found each other. So one thing, what I was going to say is that you were lucky, unfortunately, having a team kind of mold and get pieced together. If you have a really great idea for a startup and you have no doubt in your mind that it's going to be a hit, how can you go out and find some co-founders? What's the one thing you would recommend to someone?
We actually go through that period when we split up with our initial co-founders. We split up into two groups, right? Like actually, it was quite interesting. The reason why we split up was because the other two guys wanted to do a peer-to-peer marketplace, which is more generic, lower price, and a bigger market. And then me and my co-founder Suki, that we're still together running the business, we wanted to do a premium product that can hit the market on the premium end. And I guess that sort of insight came in my head from the market research experience that I've had and the data experience I've had in the previous 15 years, working out that premium brands can scale better and premium brands can capture more of an audience up and down the chain. But if you start from the bottom, it's just very difficult to grow a brand and almost impossible, pretty much. You can't really turn something that's cheap into something expensive.
That's a crazy insight. Can you break that down? Because a lot of people think the opposite.
You mean that it's easier to start with something cheap and make it more expensive?
Yeah, it's counterintuitive, and I hate interrupting, but that's such a key insight. Can you dive into more to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about it, right? Like if you go and try to buy a Coca-Cola, you're not going to pay $1,000 for Coca-Cola. It doesn't matter whether it's covered. I mean, maybe if it's covered in a gold and it's like a gold package with platinum and diamonds and it's an exclusive offer for the Arab
Yeah,
sheikhs or something, you
or
may
or
have
you're just in Ibiza because that's about how much they cost.
right? But it's not a product that would ever be considered premium. It's just a soft drink, and it's very fast moving consumer goods. But on the other side, if you're looking at Moët Chandon, for example, or if we're looking at uh, Pernod Ricard or Penfolds, they've built premium brands. And Penfolds is a really good example. Even Moët Chandon is a very good example. Right? So they build premium brands, they distribute them across the whole world. Even Burberry and sort of like what else, and Bulgari and all these premium brands, they build these really aspirational and luxury brands, distribute them across the world. And at the same time, they can, at any point of time, actually, pretty much, they can turn around and say, oh, we actually make perfume. Oh, we make this, that it's $100. It's a different category, but it captures the mass market. It's only $100. It's not $3,000 a bag. But people go and purchase it, right? I use Bulgari perfumes because I like them. They've got a few different ones, right? I wouldn't buy the bags, obviously. I'm not the target audience for the bags and the jewelry, but the brand has the value no matter whether they sell the perfume or they sell the $3,000 bags on a $100,000 jewelry, basically. But you cannot really achieve that when you start with something cheap like cola or water. Like obviously you have liquid death, but again, liquid death is not really a premium, super expensive product. And even though maybe they are more premium than normal bottled water, they've started always with the premium brand. They didn't start doing bottled water in plastic bottles, competing with Coca-Cola or some other brands. They actually started straight up from a premium, like exclusive brand, which replaces beer, for example, and pricing it at the same price as beer, which is already pretty ridiculous. It blows my mind that people would pay the same price for a can of water that they pay for a can of beer.
Never
But it
made. Did you see? It never made sense to me. Did you see the water brand? It's a I forgot the name. It went viral on Twitter.
liquid death.
No, it was another one. That's going to shit me until I remember it. But anyways, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, completely.
Does it make sense? Like it's really it's the direction. I've heard this into the software space, right? That you can start with a cheap product and then increase the price, maybe. And some companies have done it, and customers do hate it, and obviously they would run away. It probably works for a B2B software companies, but for a consumer product would never work. In particular, if you actually build already a strong brand that it's out there and people recognize it, they will associate you either with a premium brand or they will associate you with something cheap and everyday. So it depends what you want. But even Uber, for example, started from the top of the market, didn't they? They started with a
Mm.
premium luxury black cab experience, and then they added Uber cabs into the platform. And the only thing that is, or Uber taxi, whatever they call it, and the only thing that is differentiating between a normal taxi and the Uber taxi is that it's more convenient, right? It's more
So
convenient
true.
because they're already on the app.
And so I guess it kind of moves into my next question. I guess it wasn't much of a surprise to how customers reacted to CHEFIN early on then, because you kind of predicted this. You established yourself as a premium brand. It's going to be received well. But was there anything about how CHEFIN was well received among the community, among the people? Was there anything that surprised you?
I think what surprised us in the beginning is that we had a lot of concentrated customers wanting different experiences. We had this, like, to clarify, we had this assumption that people want loyalty and they would want to book the same chef. And we've always had this question, and every single investor actually asks us this: how do you keep the chefs working for you and not going directly to the customer, right? But what surprised us and what actually happened, and it's happening, is that customers actually want variety. They don't want to book the same chef every single time they're going to have a dinner. They may want a French chef this summer, and they may want for winter a Japanese chef or whatever. Actually, the other way would probably work better: Japanese for summer, French for winter. But they just change what they want and they change their behavior. And from one time to the next, they actually want something different. And that gives us a really strong advantage to keep our customers, to keep them loyal, and to keep offering them new experiences that they cannot get from an individual or from a catering company or from a competitor, basically. So that sort of surprised us, but actually it really excites us as well.
What were your customers like in the beginning to now? I mean, I mentioned at the top of the show, you're at F1, you're at all the premium events. We didn't start there. So what was the process like to go from early day customers to now being booked for the F1?
I think the thing that is really important to remember here is the tech adoption curve. I'm addicted with this thing. When you start from that bell curve, I don't know, I'm sure you've seen it, right? When you start with the innovators and then you go through the early adopters and the early
Doctors.
majority and the late adopters and then, or the late majority and then the laggers. I think that's really, really important to remember whenever you start your business. You always start with the innovators. And the innovators are literally like unloyal. Like they would just try anything that is new and they would just experience it once and then move on without caring or remembering or even like trying to rebook you. It's actually really important to remember yourself as a brand that you shouldn't market to them in that manner. You shouldn't try to build a community or build a long lasting product or a long lasting relationship because they just want to try everything that is new that comes up and they'll try it no matter whether it's you or your competitor or it's some other kid around the block or whatever it is. So we really captured in the beginning the innovators. We focused on that and we just went through them and swiped through the innovators, just tested all of them, failed everywhere we could, collected all the information, made shitloads of mistakes, and just fixed up things in the platform. And then the next stage is really trying to capture the early adopters. So the innovators and the early adopters have very high risk tolerance. Innovators are probably like, I don't know, up to almost like 100% risk tolerance if that's possible. So they'll try anything. And then the early adopters are much more conservative. They're maybe around 60, 70, depending on the person. You want to really capture some of the more risky ones that are sort of towards the innovator segment. With the early adopters is where you build your loyalty, but you also build your referral scheme or referral opportunity with reviews and feedback and things that can propel you into the next stage. So what happened to us, which was really interesting, and I would remember this for the rest of my life, is that we actually managed to push ourselves from the early adopters to the early majority very quick. So quick that we didn't actually realize it. So we had like this product that we really enjoyed. It worked really well with the innovators. It was fixed up, didn't have any more bugs. It worked really well with the early adopters. We were getting like amazing reviews and we were like raving up and we were like, yeah, we're going to grow, we're smashing it. We're going to expand everywhere. And then we went into the early majority and then the feedback came back and it was like, oh, the chef's uniform is not ironed. And I'm like, but the food was amazing. And they're like, oh yeah, the chef had like a beard and wasn't groomed well, and the uniform wasn't ironed. And I'm like, no, what does it mean?
That means nothing because the food's excellent.
Yeah, that was like such a big shock. Like in the beginning was just the first time I read the feedback was a big shock, and then after I read it like 3 or 4 times, I sort of realized, crap, we've jumped into the next chapter without fixing up our shit. Like we haven't organized the menus to be perfect. We haven't added instructions for the chefs to actually turn up on time and text the client and iron up their uniforms and bring a second apron if they get messy and stuff like that. So now we have all of these stuff where the chefs have to bring 2 aprons. They have all instructions. They have to bring an extra uniform. They have to iron it out. They have to actually groom up themselves and dress properly and blah blah blah. We have a lot of things like that. Organize their boxes so they don't turn up with like shopping bags. For example, we had even a customer complaining that, oh, the chef turns up with the shopping bags and everything looks messy and there's plastic everywhere. And I'm like, but how is the food, right? But like all of these things were little signs that the product wasn't ironed out for the mass market yet. It wasn't ready for the next stage. It's really interesting because every time you move from sort of innovators to early majority and early adopters, you can call them whatever you want, to be honest. Like these are jargon words that are used in marketing. Once you move from one stage to another stage of customers, you got to change your product. You got to polish your product. You got to improve it. And the one that was perfect for the previous stage is going to be crap for the current stage. It's like almost 100% guarantee that you got to change your product to move to the next stage and grow up into the mass market or the bigger and bigger segments of the market, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And to be fair and to look at the brighter side, like these negative feedbacks and comments are actually needed to improve your product anyway, because without them, like you said, you wouldn't have known, you wouldn't create these procedures, therefore polish your product off and have an excellent service. So fair play to the people who actually helped you deliver better excellence of quality of service and presentation and everything by leaving those comments. Petko, why don't we talk about sort of bootstrapping, funding, raising, and all those sorts of things with CHEFIN? So when you first started, you were bootstrapped. Have you raised at the minute, or are you trying to raise?
Yeah, absolutely. We bootstrapped for a while in the beginning. So we started the business around 2015, end of 2015 actually. We came up with the idea and we started talking to a lot of people about it. And then we had a customer coming around and booking us on 12th of December 2015. And then on the next day, they were like, "Oh, can we pay you?" And we were like, "Yeah, wait a bit." Then it took us another like 5 days to actually register a company, open a bank account, and send them an invoice so they can pay. And the company is registered from 17th of December, right? So there's that gap of 5 days where we had to get our shit together and get the money in. But then what we did for the next sort of year or so, we actually bootstrapped and built a product and tested it with lots more customers. We took inquiries, we promoted to random people, we did social advertising, Google advertising, even street advertising and things. We wanted to actually get random people and people we know to test the product and help us perfect it and improve it. So we are ready to build the software and then we are ready to raise. In 2018, we started raising around and we were growing like crazy. We're growing like 300% over year on year. And I think we had around 300 or so $1,000 of revenue by the time we were starting to actually raise capital in 2018. And we closed around sort of end of 2018, I think, beginning of 2019. And we managed to close a small sort of angel round around 670K or something. And then we really pushed for growth. We managed to increase our revenues to over $1 million. And we were planning to do another raise in 2020 when COVID hit. And that was like a total disaster. Obviously, we lost 95% of our revenues. People couldn't gather. Functions were canceled. There wasn't much things happening. But what was really good for us, actually, and the bright side of COVID for us was that we realized that we gotta diversify and we gotta scale. And for us, diversifying means capture more and more cities across. So when Sydney is closed, then we can operate in Brisbane, we can operate in Perth, we can operate in Adelaide and other cities, Canberra, Hobart, etc. So we expanded nationally across Australia. And that was really the foundation for us to be able to go international as well. Because once we capture different time zones and different consumer behaviors in different states, that really enabled us to scale internationally, to launch in the US, to launch in Hong Kong, to launch in Brazil. And now we're raising again. So we're doing another round. We are feeling confident that we've nailed down our marketing machine. We've built the engine. We can just pour in money in and it scales. Like every $250 we actually invest in the business, it turns into $2,500 an average order value. So our customer acquisition cost to the return investment is amazing. So we want to just pour money in and scale the business across the US in particular, and also launch and scale in Europe as well.
I bet you when you say those ROI numbers, everybody's ears just go ding and ching. I had a random thought. Did you ever think about going on Shark Tank?
We did actually. We did apply.
That's so random. I don't know why I thought that. Because this would be great for that show.
Yeah, I thought so. We did apply. We interviewed. I don't remember. Maybe it was 2018 or 19. We interviewed and they didn't cast us. Used to have a lot of rejections. I think when we did our fundraising in 2018, I was looking at the data recently. We reached out to 150 investors. We had around 30 meetings and we had 8 of them invest. So you do take a lot of conversations. You take a lot of meetings in order to get a few investors invest. This time would probably be even bigger. I think so far we've reached out to around 200 potential investors and we're just in the beginning of the journey. I want to reach out to over 1,000 investors.
This would be an interesting one for me to know what your answer is. If you had to do this all over again, knowing what you know now, what are the 2 to 3 things that you would do absolutely differently with the knowledge that you have?
It's a very hypothetical question, right? Because we
It
can
is
never
because you're in a
travel.
great spot.
Yeah. Yes, but also because you can never travel back in the past. But what I can tell you is like next company I start, what I would do for sure is I would build an audience and distribution channel first. That is probably the biggest mistake founders do or business owners do is they start with a product and solving a problem, but actually you should always start with the audience and who potentially would be purchasing this product in the future. Because once you have an audience, it's easier to actually sell things to them. Like I can tell you, for example, like we are in a good position, right? And we've scaled nicely. I'm happy with where we are at the moment. But we had another co-founder of our, or another friend of ours, sorry, two co-founders founded another business, pretty much started at the same time that we started. And they had a very clear distribution channel before they actually built the product, and they're 7 times bigger than us just because of that, basically. And so one little decision in the beginning of your business, that actually you start with a client, you start with the channel, with the audience, it just makes a huge difference down the line.
Yeah, the attention economy, right? I don't know if you're familiar with Levels.io on Twitter. He used to live out here and stuff like that. He has a massive distribution channel on Twitter, like over 600,000 followers. Anyway, have you seen like vibe coding being a thing at the moment? You know, where people just use AI, they build some games and they're coding and it looks fun and everything. Anyways, he started and it was the most basic game you would ever see, like a flight simulator. Really poor graphics, really, really poor graphics. Launched it, built it in like a weekend, right? Posted it on his Twitter. It absolutely took off within something like 2 months. It does like $87,000 in revenue a month. It's mind blowing. 100%. If you can get a distribution channel sorted and garner an audience before you launch, that is a massive life hack, especially from now and for the next 5, 10 years. I think it's the most important thing by far. Yeah, anyways, got sidetracked. So when we previously chatted and we were talking about, you said something about the food tech space. I'm not too clued on about the food tech space, but I imagine it's pretty exciting at the moment. I'm sure there's a lot of AI stuff going on. For those that are perhaps familiar with it and might see this interview, can you touch on what's the landscape like in terms of food tech space right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So food tech, I think in general, we see economic impact and also political impact on the food environment and the way food tech is structuring at the moment, in particular with the new government in the US, and also where our government wants to focus in Australia and a couple of other international governments around. And you've got a few other elements that actually really impact the future of food and what is happening with food tech at the moment, including climate change. So climate change is impacting a lot of things like coffee beans, it's impacting cocoa, and it's impacting sugar production, it's impacting meat and farming, for example. So all of these pressures, including like soil regeneration and the focus of the American government at the moment, the new administration, into regenerating soils and organic farming, and also the world moving away from pesticides and chemicals. So all of these things collide into what is the food that we're going to produce for the future, and how are we going to actually feed all the population that is going to come up in the next 10 to 20 years, because the population is meant to grow, and it's going to keep growing on the planet until we collapse. Hopefully we don't. We're going to keep growing from a population wide perspective, and then we're going to be decreasing our ability to produce food from the limited resource we have, which is earth and whatever it's left from it after we
Until
go
Elon gets us
yeah,
to Mars.
go to Mars, right? Yeah. So it's quite interesting. We see a lot of I see a lot of lab grown things coming through, from coffee beans and chocolate being produced in lab, to meat being produced in lab. Actually, we have like really cool startups in Australia. There's a couple in the US. One in Australia is called Vol. Not sure if you've heard of them. Vol Food. They do like a mammoth and Japanese quail and stuff like that. So they do some really premium and interesting things. I know these guys pretty well, and they've started from the premium end as well, which is quite cool. And it's a very different idea to producing pork and chicken and lamb, where people can actually compare with what is out there at the moment as real animals, and then you can compare with the lab grown, and you're always going to be like, I don't know, this doesn't really taste the same. But if you're eating Japanese quail, which there's no chance you can ever eat in any other place in the world, or mammoth meat, which I don't know how it tastes, maybe like elephant, but don't really eat elephant these days. So it's the same thing. It's very unique, it's very interesting, and it's a very cool way to build a brand that can potentially scale down into mass product in the future when the demand needs it, basically. So that's the other part of it. Like you got to play the demand and supply game. And then on the bottom spectrum, we have alternative proteins, and instead of lab grown and sort of created things like meats and chocolates and cocoas and coffee beans, which are driven by price, by the fact that coffee and chocolate and meat is increasing in price. So we're looking at how can we produce an alternative that has stable price. Then on the bottom of the market, we're looking at potentially health issues like vegetable proteins, like alternative proteins that are not meat related and help with vegan diets, etc. But also we're looking at mass production and ways to feed the growing population at a very low cost. So if you split the two, I've seen like protein being produced on the bottom from like vegetable fermentations, for example, vegetable fats fermenting and vegetable proteins fermenting to create meat alternatives, which would cost anywhere between like $4 to $6 a kilo. And then on the top end of the market, you are purchasing like, for example, Wagyu for $150 a kilo. So there's a very huge disparity and a very big split into the market at the moment that is happening in the food tech, where you have the premium end of the market doing really well and the bottom end of the market doing really well. And the middle is like struggling to find its place. Am I the cheapest kid in the market, or am I the most premium product that is serving the top end of the market, basically? And so I see that separation in the market. I see companies going into the bottom of being the cheapest, the fastest, and the simplest, or being in the top of being the most premium, most exclusive, and most unique. And also, we are going through a cycle of consolidation as well in the hospitality and food industry, where large companies and large brands are purchasing smaller players and amalgamating them and conglomerating them together. So a lot of M&A is happening, particularly with the IPO market being really not very good at the moment. The M&A in the early stage is a much more affordable and much more possible or plausible way of actually exiting from a startup environment and a small business environment as well. Is that giving a bit of a background?
Yeah, it does, for sure. And obviously, there's a lot of AI innovation and tech coming in to automate a lot of these processes. Sort of the crab industry, there's automated robots that look at the crab cameras, blah blah blah, cut, send it off to Japan. These sorts of things. Are you seeing a lot of that coming in? Maybe Australia's like late adopters to this stuff, but do you think AI is going to play a big role in your
Yeah.
space over the
So
next 5 years?
we've seen the robotics. Obviously, Japan is into development of robotics and ahead of the game, and China as well. In China, it's already in place. But again, it's sort of suiting the bottom of the market, which is really interesting. It's helping with reducing costs and faster production and the replacement of labor. I guess it's not a surprise. But in the US, there's a few really cool robots already in place that help. They use AI and they have help from AI to actually identify where a steak is cooked. There's one called Flippy that flips burgers on the grill. There's one called Chippy that does like fried chips for Chipotle. There's a really cool automated robot cooking machine in China that does stir fries. So you literally press a button and say, I want to have like a duck stir fried rice. You put the ingredients in a tray, stir fries the whole thing, and spits it out into a bowl. And you can actually eat a stir fried rice or stir fried vegetables or stir fried whatever you want, noodles even. It does. So cooks the whole meal, mixes up the sauces, and gives you the end dish to actually eat. It's quite cool. Then on the other side, from an AI perspective, you have a lot of vision, like a enhanced vision and AI mixed, basically, which helps with identifying for vegetable freshness and safety in the cool rooms, to whether the steak is cooked, to some really cool things like scanning a cow before they slaughter it to see whether the cow has had the ultimate marbling, or whether you need to feed it another 20 days on grain, for example, to increase the marbling. Because when you increase the marbling, you increase the price per kilo. So yeah, the tech is used on quite a few different fronts in order to increase profits or reduce costs, basically, which I guess ultimately is both increasing profits in business.
So anytime soon, will we see a chef and robot in our homes cooking our meals?
Potentially an assistant. Actually, I think the other part of it, with the split of the market and having like a really premium top end and then the lower end of the market, the other thing is the skill shortage. So we have skill shortage at the moment. We don't have labor shortage. We have more and more humans coming through and more robots coming through to actually fill the work. But we need to really focus on having the skills to give instructions to the robots, to give instructions to the AI, and to train the next generation of humans. So that skill shortage or that skill gap is where we like to play from CHEFIN and from premium perspective. We have the executive chefs, we have the knowledgeable chefs that actually help to train algorithms, to create recipes, to create new restaurants, to create new concepts, and to train the next generation, basically. So it's very unlikely you'll see chef and robot in the future, but you'll see chef and chefs training robots for restaurants and kitchens, which is
Love
already
it.
happening. Yeah.
Yeah, sick. Okay, let's talk. Uh, let's talk about how CHEFIN went from poor little old Australia, some random ocean in wherever it is you point to it on the map, to expanding into global markets. Because you mentioned it earlier, or perhaps in a previous conversation, like just going from Sydney to Perth had its challenges, right? I mean, expanding into global markets is incredibly difficult, but you've managed to do it. Not only that, you've gone into markets that's first language isn't even English, right?
Yeah.
So I would love for you to start breaking that down for me.
The Perth expansion was actually the first step for us. And with a different time zone and different culture, different consumer perception, actually was quite challenging. I would say it was probably more challenging to expand to Perth than expand to Hong Kong.
All we know is mining. All we know is mining back in WA. I'm sorry about that.
So that was quite interesting. But it did cause a lot of challenges from a technical perspective. So we had to really build up extra modules in the platform to be able to account for time zones. We just never worried about it before because everyone is in the same time zone on this side in the eastern seaboard. So we had to build new features and new mods to account for the time zones. Then we had to look at what else can we do and how can we actually target customers in a different way to account for their differences, for their different interests, different preferences, and different cuisines. So we added all of these technical modules and things. And then the next thing was like, so what do we do? Where do we go next? And it was like, let's go to the US. So we wanted to expand to the US. We hit like the US market around 2022. We actually launched in the US and we gathered a lot of traction online. But what we really struggled with in the US was actually credibility. We had a little bit of problem with credibility in Perth and WA, but we thought it's quite funny, like, because sometimes customers from Perth would call and say, "Also, are you based in Sydney?" And we're like, "Yeah, we are in Australia. We're based in Sydney." And they're like, "Oh, we wanted someone local." And we're like, "Yes, you're gonna have a local chef actually coming and cooking for you, right? We're just based out of Sydney, managing the business." But they found that even funny. But in the US was even like another level where at the moment people sniffed that you're outside of the US, there was total disappearance, no more communication and no interest. And there was no chance to even try to convince them or convert them in any way. So what we really needed to do is we needed to look as local as possible. So we ended up actually purchasing a small business in Los Angeles, in LA, and we onboarded like a small catering company. We got their reviews, we purchased their customer database, and we literally bought their credibility, onboarded them into the platform, and we started seeing bookings instantly overnight. At the moment we purchased the business, we got the reviews, we got the Yelp listings, the Google business, my business listing, and a few contracts. And the chefs was actually the same chefs that we had, is the same offering we had, the same product, the same website. It's just having that level of credibility that we are local. It just started converting people straight away.
So does that mean you just have to buy a business in every city?
You could.
Did you come up with that idea, or was that an idea that you had seen executed before?
No, I totally come up with it actually. That was totally random. It was a total coincidence. There was the opportunity. We saw the business and we were like, why not? Let's test this concept to see if it's going to work. And we
Could have gone
tested it.
tits up for sure, but obviously didn't.
Yeah, and it did work. Yeah, it didn't flop, which is good.
All right. Well, that's the US. That's one thing. So, what was the playbook to get into, I don't know, Hong Kong or Brazil, for example?
So Hong Kong was actually quite easy because it's English speaking and we haven't actually done another language. Hong Kong for us was really about providing the supply because we have clients from Australia and from the US that operate in Hong Kong, and they literally started selling our packages and our experiences in Hong Kong before even telling us. So then we sort of turn up in the morning and we have these bookings coming from Hong Kong and we're like, okay, crap. Now we got to get chefs there delivering these bookings basically. So that was like an accidental launch, if you want to call it. But Brazil was very intentional. We wanted to learn how to actually launch a new market with a different language. And we chose Brazil because one of our technical founders' wife was Brazilian and she can help us with the communication, with recruiting people and finding the right text and words and keywords and things to use. And it was an easy, very low risk market. If it flops up and people think we're shit, no one is going to know around the world, right? Like, we're not risking with Europe, we're not risking with French speaking Canada, or we're not risking with China, which is a humongous market next to Hong Kong and Singapore. So we just took that risk because it's very low impact. Potentially, it's got high reward, and it's got a lot of learning opportunities for us. And what it ended up being is actually even another level of benefits that we didn't realize, is that we can build a team in Brazil that would cover the whole Americas from south to north, and would give us the opportunity to have cost effective staff that would do customer support and sales in the US and Canada, and cover that whole continent, or two continents basically, from one location. So it was a really cool experience. Time zones and taxes and things we already sorted for the US, but it was just really overlaying the language and being able to actually translate not just the content, but also translate the visuals and make the images and make the videos that we produce to be a bit more multicultural and suitable to that audience in Brazil, basically.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things that I think would be the challenge, and maybe you can correct me or give me the insights on how to do it, is to how do you put structure in place to build these remote teams? I mean, that's it's difficult to get a remote employee anywhere these days to buy in to your dream, to your vision, especially with starting new processes and translating all of that. So how do you go about doing that? What's the first hire you make? How do you know when to hire another person? How do you know how to scale up the team over there? Are you looking at revenue numbers? What's the training process? Break down the whole building a remote team element for me, please.
You gotta really work out the time zone overlap where you can actually do the training. That's probably one of the most important things, because you do need to spend time with them. And I don't really see the difference between remote and sort of in-person team. You gotta pretty much do the same things. It's just the difference is the channel of how you actually deliver that training, and whether you meet with someone in person or you spend the time online with them. It's not that different, because you still got to do the same things. You got to walk with them through particular tasks. You got to work with them together side by side. You got to show them how you do things. You got to see how they do things. It's pretty much the same whether we're sitting next to each other here on the same couch, or you're in Thailand and I'm in here and someone else is in Brazil. I don't really see the difference. The time zone is the thing that actually makes it challenging, and someone's got to wake up early or stay too late, so you can actually cover times. From a structural perspective, the thing that I believe in is actually that everyone should be able to do everything in the beginning. So we train everyone that we hire through our whole systems and our whole process. So they start with whatever they specialize. So the moment we are training, for example, a video guy, so he'll start with creating videos and photos and editing these and creating social media content. But once he passes that stage, the next thing for him would be to train on learn SEO and generating text content. And then it would be to train and learn what the operations team does and how they actually respond to customers, and reading customer comments and understanding what customers say about the business. And then the next thing would be doing admin and digging into the CRM to work out what kind of bookings we have, fixing up things, and potentially even reading and responding to customers' inquiries. Because once they actually connect all of these dots, they'll be able to do better videos and they'll be able to do better social media. If you don't know what the customers are inquiring and what they're asking for, you're not going to be able to do social media in the same way that customers are looking for. Maybe you do it in your own perception. Maybe I'll give you feedback and my co-founders will give you feedback and you improve, but you never deeply understand why you are improving and what the customer actually wants, because you've never dealt with them. So we need to do this. We do this 360 degree. Everyone deals with everything, and then they revert back to the thing that they really like, basically, and the thing that they specialize in. And not always, but sometimes they may realize that they actually like something else more, basically, and move from the chain of maybe they'll start with social media, but they love customer support. So they'll move into customer support. And I really don't care. As far as the good person's got a few skills and they really love doing what they're doing, can understand everything around the business, then it's perfect. And we do the same like when we onboard salespeople, they'll start with sales, but then they need to have a look at operations and understand what's happening with operations. And they need to have a look at content and edit like profiles and content on the website and be able to understand all of these things. And maybe even look at social media and pictures so they can actually collect better information and better pictures and pass them into the social team. So we try to sort of flip everyone around. The most important hire for us in a new market is always customer support. So we did start with customer support in Brazil, in particular because it's different language. In the US, actually, We didn't really have issues with customer support because we have pretty good time zone overlap into the evenings where we're doing events. So we started there with sales and business development, and it's a more important hire for us anyway. So we can actually be present in person in the market and do corporate and partnerships development. But in Brazil, it's really, we want to really increase the customer support team, and we also want to increase the social media and content team. Also, another reason why is because Brazilians are obsessed with social media. Like, they just live on social media. We have clients, like some of our clients are doctors, and they communicate with their patients via Instagram, right? I don't know when is the last time you actually logged into your Instagram and sent your like dental report to your dentist and said, "Hey, I have like problems with my teeth." On Instagram, right? And sending that to your dentist is like, well, and we're talking about surgeons, right? Serious. And they're talking with their customers on Instagram in Brazil. It's like crazy.
You know, I would expect that from like WeChat in China, but I had no idea. That's insane, man. That's actually funny, because that makes sense then. Because I was going to ask. Usually, you're bringing all this in house. Usually, this is I'm going to go get Joe Blogs from Marketing XYZ to come in, and he's going to learn our business and do our marketing for us. Sounds like you're taking a slightly different approach. You want that all done in house. Keep it in house. And am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, 100%.
Any reason?
I do very strongly believe and would advise any other founder doing their own business is that if you can't do everything that needs to be done in your business, you're fucked.
Right.
Well, the moment
Fair
at the
enough.
moment you start outsourcing, you're really not just outsourcing a task, but you're outsourcing the knowledge about your customers and the knowledge and the IP of your business to someone else and risking everything with it. Especially when you're a small business, it's just not possible. Maybe when you grow and become huge, you can have a very specialized agency like, I don't know, like Apple would pay a media agency or a SEO agency, right? Or like Airbnb paid a brand agency and creative agency to design their new logo, 20 million. But we don't have the 20 millions, so we can't really
No?
afford.
Okay. Not for a logo.
Yeah, not for a logo for sure.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Maybe some SEO blogs thrown in on the side or something.
But that's the cool part of AI. Now we outsource it to ChatGPT. It's $50 a month.
Fair point. It's getting better and better. Did you see its image update is ridiculous. Petko, any plans to launch into what's your next country that you're looking at? You got your eyeballs on to launch into?
France at the moment. We want to launch in Europe, France, and the UK would be our next two markets.
What's the timeline on that?
We're pretty much ready, actually, just testing and launching the new website. It's going to be available in Europe, maybe April. So by end of this financial year, which is June, we should be live in Europe.
Yeah, can't wait for that. What made you your data guy? So I imagine it's some sort of data you looked at. What made you pick these places?
Yes, there's data, but also there is another part of it, which is the emotional connection with fine dining. That's why we wanted to go for France. Well, there's a couple of things, right? I believe that when you make a decision, you got to have at least three different arguments that support your decision. One of them is that France is the epicenter of fine dining, and it's really the place that it's connected with French cuisine, training of chefs, fine dining, amazing wine, and really the birthplace of chefs, basically. The other thing is that France has actually got as many millionaires as Australia. So it's got a pretty affluent, luxury sort of focused market. So it really works for us. And the UK's got a lot of millionaires as well. And it's got a pretty affluent population, in particular in London and Paris, right? When we're looking at the big cities. And it's also very concentrated, so it's easy to expand for us. And then the third thing is we had a competitor there shutting down in France. So we're like, we got to fill that vacuum. We got to fill that gap. We can take on their customers. We can take on the content that they have, and we can take that market gap, basically.
What will you do better that you think the competitor didn't to make you successful there?
We make money.
I forgot 250 in, 2.5 grand out.
We got to be profitable. Actually, I don't think they did a bad job. We got a lot of inspiration and aspiration from them when we first started, and we've learned a lot from these guys. But I guess the problem they have is that they didn't have a good business model. We have a really good business model. We're making money and we're cash flow positive on a booking and also on a business side. So every booking actually makes us money and adds to the bottom line.
Let me know when you open up in Thailand, please, because there's a crap ton of millionaires and even a fair amount of billionaires out here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Bangkok is a cool city. I think before we come into Thailand, we will most likely do Singapore first and then
No, no.
Philippines.
Really? Oh man. Okay. Oh, they're not too far away. They're just a cheap flight away, so I'll have to go. I have to go experience there or something.
50 bucks.
I mean, yeah, something like that. Singapore F1 could meet you there. Hey, just curious, you do marketing. What's your best marketing channel right now?
Depends on the country. In Australia, it's Google. In Brazil, is Instagram. And in the US, is LinkedIn.
Right. What specifically on Google? Is it organic, paid?
We tend to do mostly organic, to be honest. But when we enter a new city and a new market, in the US, we also use Google. It works in Hong Kong as well. So when we enter a new market, we do paid. We do paid advertising like Google Ads, paid content, and also display ads. But what we find is that when our organic picks up, usually it takes around 6 weeks or so for the organic to pick up. It actually overshadows and ranks better and performs better than the paid search. So we really do paid search only to build the initial awareness, to target the market and sort of create a little bit of more traction on our website, which helps us support the organic content. And then when the organic content starts ranking, we really double down on the organic content.
I'm surprised you're doing nothing on TikTok.
Nah, we're not really huge fans of TikTok. We've done a bit of content on TikTok, but what we found is that it's very addictive and it's very fast-paced moving, and it doesn't really suit the customers that we deal with. Like
Yeah,
Facebook and Instagram work better for us because you have all the audience. The younger audience don't tend to be interested in experiential style services.
they would have tuned out from this video a long time ago anyway.
Yeah, correct. Fallen asleep.
Yeah, all that. Yeah. Hey, Petko, but just before we wrap up here, I just want to ask you about the future of Chef and what does that look like for you in the next 5 years?
Global domination. We're really looking at owning as many cities and as many markets as we can around the world. That's really the key for us. We found that big differentiation and a big moat for us is to actually have coverage and being able to win clients based on coverage, being able to actually get contracts and work with big brands because we cover multiple cities, multiple areas. And also, it gives us another really interesting advantage that when a customer of ours moves from one city to another, we can retain their business. We had customers move from New Zealand to Hong Kong, from Sydney to Palo Alto in San Francisco, and we had chefs moving from here to from Sydney or from Melbourne to New Caledonia or from France to the US, etc. So having that global coverage means that we are not missing on revenue opportunities and we can actually scale the business faster and more sustainably. So that's really important for us. Number one, global domination. And then number two is obviously closing our current raise. We're raising 3 million at the moment and we're looking to help or use this money to help expand globally and reach that global domination, right? And then the third thing that we're looking at is starting to plan who we want to work with and who we want to partner with in a long-term perspective for the future. In particular, we're really interested in luxury brands. We're really interested in brands playing into the top end of the hospitality space, in luxury goods, dining experiences, and experiential concierge services around the world. So these are the three things that we're really focusing at the moment, like scaling, raising, and partnering.
Nice. I ask every person that I talk with one final question, which is if you had to give just one piece of advice to a young entrepreneur, what would that piece of advice be?
Right. I think one of the most important things that I found throughout the years is to always follow the money. You got to really be focused on where the money are coming from and where your customers are and how much are they going to pay. And once you have that dollar sign dangling in front of you, and once you can capture the dollar sign, you can dangle it in front of suppliers, you can line your team up around. Basically, you can do anything you want. But if you don't have the money, then you're just dreaming and having talks and conversations. And you got to really be able to walk the talk and talk the walk and follow the cash. Grab the cash, and then everything aligns, basically.
Well, Petko, thank you so much for sharing that. For our listeners who want to learn more about CHEFIN or connect with yourself, what's the best way that they can do that?
Best is on LinkedIn. I'm always on LinkedIn, or on our website. You can send us an inquiry or contact form, whatever, chefin.com, and you'll find me very easily. I always look at all my emails and I always look at all my LinkedIn messages.
And that brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you, Petko, for jumping on. Really enjoyed having a great conversation with you. Amazing insights. Look forward to seeing results from CHEFIN. Good luck with the raise. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'll see you on the next episode of the Scalefold podcast. Ciao. See you,
Awesome.
Petko.
Thank you. Bye.